I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Welcome to the Thursday Night Big Book Study Workshop of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We'll go through it as Keystone Group. Great meeting Monday nights with the women. It was Christine, and Ray does Tuesday night, and I think there's a couple happening Saturday. You could kind of tune into the Keystone Big Book discussion group on Facebook if you want, or in the chat there'll be some posting of information. If you're just joining us, we do a review. We kind of go all over the place. And I like tying the book together because it's really interesting as you go through it and the more you study it, how it builds on certain ideas and it gets us ready. And where we're at tonight is the process of making a decision. And I think it's one of the most confusing steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the only reason it's so confusing is because the people who are sponsoring people are not sponsoring them along the guidelines of the understanding of the collective understanding. What happens is a lot of people start going rogue with their ideas, meaning they read a bit and then they go their own way with their thinking and what it means to them and their understanding. Then they pass that under to other people, and there's two people with different understanding than the collective understanding and the whole purpose of it, and it gets kind of really distorted. And if you didn't know the actual kind of layout of it or the information behind it, then a lot of it makes sense. But once you go through this, then you could see the confusion, you could see the misunderstanding, because this thing is it's put together in such a way that's all-inclusive, right? And anybody having a hard time with any part of it is not understanding the information behind it. Because if you understood the basic information, it's all-inclusive. It's designed for our success. And so the way the steps are laid out, it's kind of step one is the information, and we'll get into that a bit later. And step two is they kind of talk about the solution that they've found and incorporated in their life, which is the course of action, the decision. And we talked about that last week, how it works and that course of action. And they're coming from a place of having that experience. We have yet to have that experience. We're coming from a place of trying to gather some form of knowledge that we could share about at the next meeting, right? They're talking about experience. We're talking about knowledge. And moving from an idea to an experience is what this thing is all about. And what I mean by that is without knowing it, a lot of us, when we first came to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, a lot of people call it the program, which is misinformation, right? It's a fellowship of people now, or men and women, whatever floats your boat. I don't really get into it that much. But before we even realize we come to our first meeting, there's something already in place that we get to experience without realizing we're experiencing it. And that's the design of Alcoholics Anonymous if you're going to responsible groups that follow the traditions, right? So the first thing we get introduced to is the traditions without realizing it, right? The Commonwealth, Tradition 1, Tradition 3, Tradition 5, and then we realize no endorsement from other outside agencies and all that other, it's quite interesting how we start to experience the traditions without knowing we're experiencing them. And we start getting taught them without realizing we're actually being taught them. That's an outside issue, singleness of purpose, and stuff like that. And then when you further investigate these things that people talk about, you see a lot of it's tied to the traditions, right? And world service, and the people who are involved, and all these things are in place that we get to enjoy before realizing what's happening. And as we sit in these meetings, there's a lot of people. There's three groups of people in Alcoholics Anonymous. There are those that don't know what's going on at all, which is the new person. And there are those who formulated their own ideas and carry their message and their understanding and what works for them. And it usually sounds like my program. Well, for me, my understanding. Then there's another group of people who have the collective experience, right? And why do they have the collective experience? Because they did collectively what the first 100 men and women did. So when we got introduced to like the fourth fourth edition, which is really interesting. The title page talks about the story of how many thousands of men and women who have recovered from alcoholism, right? And they put this basic text together, right? Not them, but the same experience of those who put it together, the first 100 men and women that started Alcoholics Anonymous over 80 years ago. They put their collective experience, what we call the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which outlines the program of AA, right? And so when they say get in the middle, I think they're referring to is the book as Alcoholics Anonymous. Get into this. This is the recipe for longevity, right? And so these group of people talk about their experience that they obtained as the result of going through this course of action. A lot of people talk about the course of action like that's the message, and that isn't the message. That's the vehicle. It's like when you go on holidays. Anybody ever been on holidays? Well, the plane ride or the car ride is just a vehicle. You don't spend your whole time talking about how much the inside of the car, right? When you're traveling, right? Yeah, how was your trip? Oh, it was great. You seen the buttons on the radio, and you describe the inside of the car for the next hour, right? Well, that's not the vacation. The vacation is the experience the car allows you to have by traveling, and that's kind of like the steps and where we're at. So we talked about in great detail. Hopefully, if you have good sponsorship, you've spent a bit of time on page 44. Right, which is kind of sets up the whole essence of this whole thing to where we are going to tonight. And they talk about on page 44, and what I do for those who are sponsoring people, and we want to know if they have a good grasp of this thing or not, or if you want to know if you have good sponsorship, ask them to explain the first paragraph. Most people can't explain the first paragraph. My sponsees, the people I sponsor, before they move on, they need to explain to me the first paragraph. And the first paragraph on page 44 says, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism. We hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. Right? So I would explain what that is. What's the distinction between the alcoholic and non-alcoholic? And you'd be surprised at how many people in our fellowship couldn't explain that to you. What makes somebody a real alcoholic? What makes somebody beyond human aid? What are the characteristics that they talk about in step 1 that makes one powerless over alcohol? Right? What are the common denominator? What is the collective experience on this thing, right? And more about alcoholism, it talks about how should we help our reader to determine to their own satisfaction whether they're one of us. And so they start talking about this malady, and right away people think it's a spiritual malady. That isn't what makes you alcoholic. They start talking about this condition of the mind that centers in it that we can't see, feel, and touch, right? And then they give examples what that looks like. The two people, Fred, Jim, and the other guy who met with the doctor, I think Dr. Carl Jung or whatever, I'm not too sure. Somebody, Ray would know way more about that than me, but the guy on page 20 and 23, right? So they talk about here, we hope we have made clear the distinction between alcoholic and non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And so those of us who, like the other day, it was quite interesting. They're reading one of the daily reflections. And in the daily reflection, it talks about we don't have the monopoly on recovery. There's a lot of different ways on how to get sober. Well, we only have one way to get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. We only endorse one way. And if you look at the history, why this was put together, if all those other ways worked for people like us, then there wouldn't be Alcoholics Anonymous. Then it would be a different program of recovery, say, based on Dr. Silkworth. It'd be his program of recovery, as outlined in the town's hospital that was introduced to Bill and countless other alcoholics, right? And he found his methods didn't work for people like us. What was the characteristic for people like us, why it didn't work for it, was this malady, this condition, this phenomenon that's centered in the mind. And they explained it in great detail from page 21 to 33. right? And they get really into it from 33 to 43. So they talk about here, if I need this change, and I know what they mean by a psychic change or spiritual experience, what's interesting is then they lead me into the conversation about this power greater than ourselves and we agnostics. They give us their outline and their understanding. And the basis of it is, and it's kind of interesting, the basis of it is if you're working with other people, they talk about here in working with others, which is exactly what we do in turn with what was done to us, right? They talk about on page 93. They ask us to wait for them to ask us how we got well. And they let them ask you, let him ask you that question if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception, right, of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him or her. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he will live by spiritual principles. And so imagine that. So no matter if you're a true believer, agnostic, or an atheist, we're all starting from the same place. And what's the same place? Lack of power is our dilemma. And when they talk about getting access to this power, they go on to explain what this power looks like in our lives. And the spiritual appendix does a great job talking about it. Talks about all our members have tapped into an inner resource, something that happens inside. And when we kind of look at page 44 and 45, you can look at it later. 54 and 55, it talks about where the secret is, deep down within of every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. And then right away we go, oh, well, how about life force? Or this energy, this thing that talks to us, that wants us to have a different experience than what we're experiencing. We've all had that, otherwise we wouldn't come here looking for a different way of living. Something inside wanted a different experience than we were living. Anybody? Yes? So if you were able to tap into that on a more consistent basis, our more religious member call it a God consciousness, right? So if you're able to live out of this consciousness, imagine if you went back over your life and every time something inside of you said, don't do that or do this, and you did that, would your life look a lot different than it did when you got here, right? How many people even had that voice that said, don't do that, but you couldn't stop yourself from doing it? So that's it, right? So I'm not doing the things I want to do, and I'm doing the things I don't want to do. And I'm being governed or driven by something different than what I hope to, than my own understanding. What explains that best is, we talked about it last week when we talked about page 62. If you're driven by an underlying feelings, emotional, and ideas that you're unaware of, and you're making decisions on, that your thinking is just a summary of what's happening below the surface, right? Rooted in these things, then you're always going to be in a place of regret. And they talk about this human condition as the bedevilments. That's not alcoholism, but we experience it more. Why? Because we continuously are unmanageable and going back to drinking because we haven't found a solution for the human dilemma yet. Alcohol used to be our solution. Now they're offering us spiritual principles, certain ideas that we're going to put into practice to have a different experience. And the outlay or the overview of what that is, where we talked about that last week, but most good ideas are simple, that they talk about at the bottom of the page here, on page 62. He is the principal of Where's Agents. And if you kind of look at what agent means, look at, or principal or father, the idea of that being governed or guided by something other than me for the betterment of my life. Like my kids growing up, I used to tell them, my job is to prepare you for life. That's my job. And then when you move out from here, I had lunch with my daughter today. I told her how proud I am of her. She's 28 and she's voting. I didn't agree with who she voted for, but she's still, that's her voice, right? And I made fun of it, but we had fun, and we talked about integrity, we talked about principles, and you know, she's looked after, her mom passed away 4 years ago, and she made peace with her mom before she passed, and we talked about that, and she's been, her sister, half-sister, has this illness that she needs help with, and so she, in her life, looked after her for the last 4 years. And now she's moving into a different area. And I just told her how proud I was of her and the integrity she showed by being able to do that. So the human condition is that she has an answer for that. She prays, she applies spiritual principles, but she still struggles with life. But her solution is she'll seek out, like, counsel with other people. She'll go to counseling in college. She's in college and all that other stuff. For us, we drink. Anybody? And that used to bring about a sense of ease and comfort. Then that stopped working. Now what's even baffling is now that I'm trying to fix my life, all I know is how to apply me to me. All I know is how to exert my will. All I know is to try harder. Just don't drink no matter what. Meeting makers make it. And it sounds all good until you understand the illness. And when you understand the illness is, man, I'm faced with something I can't do nothing about. But here we're being faced with the opportunity where they talk about, well, if you pursue this solution, we have an answer for you. It'll remove this component and it'll change your story. What will it move? It'll remove the malady that centers in the mind, and you'll recover from this illness that's baffling you. And you'll start your own experience. So step 3 is the beginning of your own experience. You've been having an experience within the fellowship. You've been experiencing the fellowship. You've been experiencing the traditions. You've been experiencing the members and the support and the hope. But that's not enough to sustain us. Now we need to make a decision. Do I want to have my own experience now? Right? Do I need to pursue this solution in order to participate in the saving of my life? Because there's no door number 3 now. Unless I recover from this thing, I already know that the alternative is to die an alcoholic death. My story has been repeatedly proven that I can't fix me with me. And all the avoidant therapy in the world and treatment all is not enough. I need this psychic change of spiritual experience. And that was the branching off from the town's hospital, and the kind of the welcoming, the idea, first the observation of this thing, the miracle taking place in his facility, watching Bill recover from this thing through the guidance of Ebby, right? And he watched this whole hard miracle take place, and he welcomed the idea of working with other people. So he's seen this unfold in this place, and he would recommend people that he was unsuccessful with, right? So he endorsed this movement. So he's seen that there was actually a potential solution for these people he wasn't able to reach. And thus the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And there's nothing wrong with those places. It's a good start. And it's a sifting center for a lot of us. Because a lot of us will go, we feel better. Then I don't know why I relapsed, because it's like the town's hospital. Bill felt great going to treatment, yes? First time? Second time, not so much. Third time, he went on with a different purpose and design. So here they talk about at page 62, says, we are his agents. He is the Father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, which is a problem for us. And this concept was the keystone of the new triumphant arch which we passed to freedom. The keystone is the passing, the ability to keep the arch in place. And they talk about this thing being inside of us, getting access to the spiritual realm, moving from the human experience into the spiritual entity or energy or power that's available through us, through a power greater than ourselves. On page 164, it talks about walking hand in hand, right, in the fellowship of the universe, or the spirit of the fellowship. There's 2 fellowships, right? So we enter the first one, the physical one, then we move into the spiritual one, right? The 4th dimension, right? So it's like a house. Like the best way it was explained to me, they talk about and working with it, use everyday language. I said, what's the fourth dimension that these people talk about? He says, well, your house has 4 dimensions. Your room, the room I'm sitting in, has a floor, right? Has walls and a ceiling. That's 3 dimensions. What makes it comfortable is the power that runs through it. I've tapped into that power, which is the 4th dimension. It makes life livable. And the steps are the access to the 4th dimension, to that power that's universal. That's why they talk about in step 10, we've just entered the world of the spirit. They talk about in step 5, which is the whole purpose of this thing, we've just entered the world of the spirit. The world of our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. What does that mean? It's like when I moved into this house, I didn't know where all the outlets were. I didn't know what operated what. This switch turned on these lights. This switch turned on that light. This had dimmer switches on. This switch was for the furnace. You know what I mean? And as the more I live here, the more I understand exactly how everything works, and I can explain it to the electrician or people coming in here. Right? How it operates. I grew an understanding of it. Now, if I really want to, I know how it's connected to the street and how it's connected to the main source, and then on and on and on. So my understanding of power is very vast, and it's the same aspect within my life. So here they talk about, I kind of go sideways every once in a while. Those that know kind of go, he'll be back in a second. Just veered off. He's gone off-road. He'll be back in a second. Okay, so here we go. Page 63, they're talking about their experience now, collectively. A lot of people say, oh, this is the step 3 promises. No, this is the overall view or the experience of what we could expect. Here's the beginning. When we sincerely took such a position, what position? That God was going to be the Father, we're his agents, he's the principal, right? That when we took that position, step 3, and moved on with the rest of the steps, right? To obtain my own experience. Step 1 and 2 is the problem, the solution. Step 3 is, do I want my own experience with this thing that I've seen all around me that these people have been talking about? Do I want to move into participating in the saving of my own life? Step 3 is a decision to have this experience. All sorts of remarkable things followed, not happened. If you're painstaking about this phase of your development, you'll be amazed before you're halfway through, which is in step 10. Halfway through your amends in your relationship with a power greater than yourself, which is the purpose of this, and working with others. It's a full meal deal, right? It's like the triangle. Everybody talks about the triangle. It's not the triangle that makes it possible. It's the circle. The circle keeps the triangle together. That's my relationship with something greater than myself and is exhibited in all areas of my life. May sound interesting. We had a new employer. Think about that. We had a new employer. That's pretty powerful. And when I was new, I thought about that idea. Have a new employer, and if it's a power greater than myself that has the keys to the kingdom, to the universe, and all things are possible, if it could create a psychic change or spiritual experience within my mind sufficient enough for me to recover, then what's left? What isn't possible? So the only limitation to this thing will be and always is me. That's wild when you think about this. Like, I'm not having there's no problem with this. There's only one problem with the steps in the process, and it's me. There's no problem with step 3. It's my understanding and my stumbling blocks that I create within myself. Right? My understanding of things. Well, what's our understanding? Oh, I don't know. Well, figure out. It tells us what our understanding is, and then you choose your own conception from that, because it's the same for all of us. Lack of power. What's the solution? Power. And if you don't understand that, then how can you be willing to pursue this thing? Then if you're locked into, well, I have a Samsung, I have an iPhone, your phone, like that's secondary. Do you have a phone that works? No. Well, here, let's plug it in, get some power to it to see if you got access and the basis of it. The first thing, in order to operate a phone, does it have power? So in order for you to recreate your life, do you have power? Not so much, eh? Just a big pile of stuff, but we're not getting into that right now. And 417 doesn't seem to work too well. That was for you, Ray. Just thought I'd throw that out there. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Well, we'll find out what those things are as we go through this, right? It tells us what those things are in the next phase of our development here, right? There's many phases to our development that they talk about. If we've been painstaking about this phase, there's different phases, right, to our development. It's just like when we build a house. We only see the workers happening, but there's a whole bunch of things happening simultaneously that make that possible. And that's the same like going through this process. Performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves. Interesting, that's what Bill talked about. He was the check his newfound thinking with the new God consciousness within. That's what they just talked about on the previous page. The more we tapped into this, the less I became focused on me. First stage recovery, it's all about me, my ideas, my thinking, and can I share? Second stage recovery is how can I be of help? How can I carry this message? And can I talk about the experience I had as the result of going through these steps? What a marvelous thing, the experience of this thing. A lot of people talk about the mechanics, right? But a lot of people could talk about how to drive a car, and if you've never driven one, then it's useless to you. Big difference between talking about driving a car and actually driving a car. Big difference. If you've never swam in your life, you can talk about swimming all day, but once you hit that water, it'll become evident that maybe I don't know how to swim. My knowledge is not sufficient here. I need to have the experience. Everybody picking up what I'm putting down here? That's why the experience. Do you want this experience? And these guys are saying yes. So it talks about here. Oh my God, I just went a little sideways again. Okay, established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves. I like that. Our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. That's pretty wild. As new, get that. As new power flowed in. Not mine. Remember whenever he was sitting Bill, he says there was no more power in him than me in that moment. But there was something happening different with Ebby than was happening with Bill. Ebby's eyes were lit up. He was like, oh, the guy was on fire. There's something. He was lit up from the inside out, not from the outside in. Right? My brain went somewhere, my mouth didn't. That's progress. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I was very impressed with myself there for a second. Okay, we're gonna move on. All right, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind. So what happened first? The power, then the peace of mind. Not the peace of mind, then the power. What's our dilemma? Lack of power is our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live. Well, where and how were we to find that power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. So as I go through this, it'll start taking place, and I won't know the level on which it's being activated or getting accessed or experienced, and then you'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do. Somewhere along the line, as you're going through, you go, holy shit, there's something happening here. But what's even more cool is the people around you will go, holy shit, there's something happening with that person. Like there's something becoming fundamentally different from, well, what makes you say that? Well, they came here for an hour the other day and didn't ask me for no money. And the TV's still on the wall. I mean, there's something. Anyways, some of you will get that. Okay. So, as we felt new power flow, and that's worth reading again. As we enjoyed peace of mind, what a gift that would be. A peace of mind. You don't know what peace of mind is until you've experienced it. And once you experience it, like remember in Bill's story, he was so alarmed by it that he phoned his friend. Imagine being so alarmed by the peace and ease and happiness that's inside of you that you become panicked by it. What's the matter? I don't know. I feel that total peace and ease. I feel lit up inside. I don't know. I feel happy. Remember that movie where the guy, the Ghost of Christmas Past, where he has a spiritual experience and he gets it, and he's just nut. Like he's just he can't contain himself. He's like, go buy the biggest, pig in the window, right? And he's like, and his maid is just like beside herself, and he wants to do it. Like he's just, I'll give you a raise. Remember that scene? He's just ecstatic. That's kind of like sometimes, which always happens, and sometimes slowly and sometimes quickly, sometimes over a period of time, but somewhere along the line, you will be amazed what's happening in your life. That's one of the problems. You will be amazed. If you're not amazed, you're missing something. You'll be in a state of moments of awe, like a sunset or something miraculous happening from the inside. You'll be so lit up from the inside that your eyes will start leaking. That's what I call it, leaking. My eyes leak every once in a while. Right? You'll be imagine being so overwhelmed with gratitude on your life that your eyes start leaking. I mean, wow. So, anyways, okay. As we discovered we could face life successfully. And we agnostics, again, they talk about rising above their problems and God making that possible because we don't understand the experience that they're talking about and it doesn't make sense to us. We just smiled. Like we're crackpots. The guys who helped me out, they told me about their experience with this, and I thought they were nuts. I was thinking, oh my God, I'm in trouble. These guys are nuts. But I had nowhere else to go. Like, they were the only people willing to work with me. And so I said, well, maybe I could get that kind of nuts. And I've been that way ever since. So I'm on the right side of crazy, and I'm okay with it. Anyways, I have moments I look in the mirror and just start laughing. And my wife goes, oh, yeah, you think gratitude again? I said, yeah. I say, my God, you survived you. How do you feel about that? I think thank you, God. I said, because my brain had a contract out on my ass, and it was killing me, right? Now I've been in witness protection now 36 years. It's not bad. So, okay, as we became conscious of his presence, we're moving from the cheese factory into consciousness. We're less concerned with what's happening up here, and we're more concerned with what's happening in here. We have the happening in our lives, and that's something you got to experience. It's like somebody trying to describe it's like an alcoholic trying to describe to somebody who's never drank how alcohol affects us. Like how my wife describes it, how alcohol and it's not appealing. But how I talk about how it affects me is like, wow. And then she says, I don't have that same experience. I said, sorry about that. No, that's good. Okay. As we became conscious of his presence, right? This is awesome, right? So, where are we? As we became conscious, we begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and hereafter. How many people spend endless hours in yesterday or tomorrow? And what dread of what tomorrow will be. How many people have conversations with people who are not even with you? You're alone talking to them and arguing with them. How many people talking about or thinking about scenarios that are not happening that you're preparing for? How many people have been to their own funeral more than once here? It's amazing where the mind will take you. I've been in car wrecks that are not even happening. Just the thought of the bridges collapsing, like cutting my fingers off when I saw it, I'll think about the whole thing. Right? Like the mind is a terrible master. Right? So anyways, we begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and here. We're reborn. That to be honest, that saying just for years, because I come from an evangelical background, but I understand what it means to become anew. Right? It's amazing how little things could stick with you regardless of how long you've been sober. But it's been a little while since it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We're now at step 3. Many of us said to our makers, we understood him. How do we understand him? We understand him as getting access to a power deep down within us that allows us access to this power that creates a psychic change or spiritual experience. That's how we understand it, lack of power. That's our collective understanding. So you must be willing to believe in a power greater than yourself. It's like me being here and you don't believe that outlet will power your phone and I have whatever. And all you need to do is lie your phone on this contraption here and it will light up. It will start charging your phone just by lying your phone on it. How many people would have argued that before they seen it? No, I need a charger. No, put your phone on here and start charging. No, I need a charger. just lie your phone on here and it'll start charging. It doesn't make sense to me how that could even happen. I put my phone on there. I go, oh my God, it's like it's charging my phone. Then I'm a genius trying to show 3 other people that technology, right? Like I did. And that's kind of like this thing. Once you experience, it's pretty wild, right? So, this consciousness. Okay, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. So that means, what's God's will for me at this point in time is to formulate this relationship by getting access to the power. Well, how do I do that? I need to go through the rest of the steps. Because if I was capable of turning my will and life over in step 3, I wouldn't need to do any of the other steps. I'm making a decision, have an experience that comes as the result of this course of action. If I was capable, and then the kind of trick there, because the care of. So when we go away, sometimes we get our buddy Arnold to look after our dog. Hey, can you take care of our dog? Guess what I expect when I come home? I expect my dog back. Nope, you give us your dog, that's it. You turn, the care of. And the best way I heard this was, I'm going to trust God with the direction of my life, or this power. I'm going to trust this process to dumb it down to the simplest. I'm going to trust this process to direct my life in a way that I hope to experience this psychic change or spiritual experience. So my prayer was, I don't know who or what you are, but I need a new experience than the one I've been having. I said, show me. That was my step 3. I said, show me. I said, I'm open, right? All my understanding and all my teaching has been stumbling blocks in my life and kept me away from the possibility of the experience that all these people are talking about. I said, okay, show me, right? Let's see what you got. And I think I heard a little voice that said, well, put on your seatbelt there, Buttercup, because it's going to be a ride. And it's been like mind-boggling, right? So, relieve me of the bondage of self. What's the first thing that I'm asking for, hoping for, is the relief of the bondage of self. That's the first thing that I'm hoping is the relief of the bondage of self. That I may better do thy will. What's thy will? We'll find living by certain principles, being of service, being of help, and being of service. Oh no, what an order. Okay, take away my difficulties. Well, isn't that wild? Right? So I'm asking for the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will, right? And take away my difficulties that I stumble with on a daily basis so I could have a new experience. That doesn't seem too bad, does it? That seems like a pretty good deal, right? I'll do this thing, but I'll get these things in return. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. But there's a problem with this deal, right? Is the person who's engaging it, me. Because I still suffer for me. I still suffer. My brain has the ability to trick me or to talk myself out of things that I've made an agreement with, that my life depends on obtaining it. Maybe I'm the only one here. Right? The people I was so happy to see one day, give me a week and they will become my problem. Surprised they ever come here. Look at these people. The week before, oh, they're so nice, so happy. Look at them, they're fantastic. And I turn against them all. I'm probably the only one like that in this group, right? No one's like that. That's okay. That victory over them may bear witness to those I would help with thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Notice it didn't say bear witness to these steps. And this process. Bear witness to the experience I got. And if you want what we have, I'll show you the process and how to do it. Remember, Ebby talked about his experience. Then he talked about how he obtained it, right? First he talked about his experience, Bill bought in, and then, like you talked about in working with others, ask him, well, how do you do this? Well, we already read, the idea was you read through this already, went through a course of action. So I have this experience. What's the experience? How I tapped into this power, how I created the change, to relieve me of the bondage of self, took away my difficulties. These promises come true as the result of what? My relationship with something greater than me. What got me that relationship? This course of action. So what's the purpose of the course of action is to have this relationship, right? And when I have this relationship, it takes away all these things that are killing me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Yes? Because how many people want to do the steps and be the same as they were going into them as they come out of them? How many people want to do the steps just to work more on you? Oh my God, leave you alone for a minute. Can you leave yourself? The obsession with self, right? What's our first obsession? Self. Right? Page 23. I can fix me with me. I may be not much, but that's all I think about. Right? Anybody here? We don't realize how much we think about ourselves because that's all we do. Yesterday, today, the bondage of the mind, the entrapments, the maze. Okay, so they talk about here, which is interesting, right? May I do thy will always. Well, that's a tall order right away. What an order, I can't go through with it. But what's I haven't even started yet, and I've talked myself. May I do thy will always, and part of my mind will go, still, I'll catch it. Well, at least 98% of the time. What a little chuckle, right? That's just the id, right? So we thought well before taking this step, making sure we're ready, that we could at least abandon ourselves utterly to Him. Well, what's the abandon? And is the idea that I could get access to this power that will enable me to have a psychic change or spiritual experience and live certain principles that will allow me to have a daily reprieve, right? And longevity. Now I'm looking at longevity, not just staying sober one day at a time, but longevity with the idea that maybe I can stay sober for the rest of my life if I engage in this course of action, this way of life. Right? The practicing these principles in all my affairs, meaning is not an act of self, but it's an act of being connected with something greater than me that gives me the ability to do that. A lot of people can start talking about the steps and talk about everything they do, but be absent of their relationship with a power greater than themselves. And then as they go through the steps, it switches to how they're back working on themselves. Because the mind's tricky, right? The mind will say, hey, right? It's not about your relationship with God. It's your relationship with you and how you're fixing you and how you're working on you. Now go share about you at the meeting and all the troubles you're having, and then talk about page 417 and the inability to make that happen, and you talk about it every day. Right? Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. Then you should have just said that once and you should have no problems from then on, right? So we don't understand how delusional we are, because what we do is I call it turn it over, envelope, discard sobriety. What that means, I have a problem. Oh my God, I don't like this. So I put it in the drawer, thinking I've dealt with it. But life's getting me another notice. Another notice is coming, and even though I don't see it today, and then I get another notice in the mail, and I get upset that I'm getting another notice because I've ignored the first one. Anybody? Right? And then they're going to threaten to cut off my phone, and I phone them indignant with the idea that they're going to cut off my phone when I'm arguing with them. I know nobody's ever done that here. Arguing with people about stuff that you've ignored and been irresponsible with, and then blame them for it. Anybody? And the mind is, I'll show you. Anybody ever quit a job? And that job's still going and they're still happy and you're surprised that they're still happening? You ever leave a relationship? You'll never find somebody like me. And they go, that's the plan. And you go, what? What do you mean by that? Anyhow, so the ability to see what part of my mind is causing me the problems and apply spiritual principles to have a different outcome. Man, that'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? To have the foresight instead of the hindsight. We got great hindsight. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have called that. Well, this is about having foresight, the intuitiveness. So they talk about here, as we go through this, is really interesting. They talk about the wording was, of course, quite optional, so long as we express the idea. This is an idea that I could have this experience. And when you look at step 3, it's a summary of the whole course of action. It's the summary of the experience of going from step 3 to step 12. So, and also it's the idea that I could have a relationship with this power. The confirmation of the idea that they say here in step 3 is the relationship in step 11. So the idea of step 1 is relapse. The idea and the presentation of step 2 is a psychic change or spiritual experience. So the confirmation of the ideas presented in step 2, which is the course of, is step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. What steps? The ones that were presented in step 2. Here in step 3, I'm making a decision to seek, and not only to seek, but to have an experience with this power. Well, how do I do that? I got to continue through the rest of the book. But there's a problem. My brain's already started causing me problems. We know. That's why the first thing we're going to ask for here is the relief of the bondage itself. The second is the difficulties. I'm going to see these things in my mind. So, but I don't know what they are, because if I could see what they're talking about on page 60 to 62, then I wouldn't need to do an inventory. They found out these things that arise out of themselves, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run right, because they've done step 4. Being convinced any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. You got to see it in black and white what that looks like. Otherwise, my mind disguises it. Right? I could come to a conclusion yesterday, and by the time I think about it 3 more times, I've changed it. It's just the way my mind is. It happened the first time. And anybody remember early in their drinking, the first time they felt embarrassment from their drinking? You know that feeling in your stomach? And you hear people walking upstairs or wherever they are, and the people who witnessed you the night before, and you're waking up to the reality of that. Like you're 14, and you're thinking what you did, how embarrassing. That night you had it all under, but in the morning you got, your stomach goes, your conscious talks to you. How many people had that? Right? And then your mind goes, well, wait a minute. Let's go over this again. So you're lying there and you go over it again. And he's still like, the mind says, well, let's go over it again. Okay, now you've gone over 3 or 4 times. You've changed the whole story. Now it's funny. Now you can go see these people, or you don't remember. Right? Anybody use those cards? It now becomes funny. My mind's created an embarrassing, shameful situation as funny, that I could go meet these people. We all have a laugh at it, and then we get the hazing for the day or so, and then by the weekend we create new stories, and then the mind defends us, keeps us safe, keeps us protected, keeps us away from the truth. Yes, anybody? Because we can't change the reality, so we change how our mind perceives it. Now you get here and whatever you do, don't be left unsupervised. So we've done the best we can with you so far. Now you need constant supervision, and this is where this comes in. I'm making a decision to seek constant supervision. I'm going in the witness protection plan because I need help from me. Right? That's what this is. I'm making a contract to go into witness protection plan. I've told on myself. I've ratted myself out. I see I need protection for me because I realize there's been something that's been trying to kill me for years, and I just realized it's me. That's a sobering plan. I used to think it was everybody else. Then I realized, wait a minute. Anyways, we'll move on. So they talk about, so long as we voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning. Though if honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. The idea that I'm pursuing a solution to my life here, that there may be an answer, that I could have what these people around me have, or I could have what these people in this basic text would have. That's pretty good news, considering my life doesn't have to be the same as it was, that I could have a different story here. And it's not my story, it's the story of Alcoholics Anonymous that's being made available to me, right? You don't get your story back. You get our story if you want what we have, right? You get our experience. It's collective. It's all collective. It's not singular anymore, right? So now I'm going to move in the same path as all those that went before me that have this experience with this relationship with a power greater than myself. So it talks about, next, we lunged out on a vigorous course of action. That doesn't mean next week. next month. That means I'm getting busy now. Vigorous course of action. That means the tub's overflowing. I need to get it turned off and the plug out fast. Anybody? Vigorous course of action. Anybody ever been in somebody else's house and the toilet starts filling, like running over, like going to go run over? You're in a vigorous course of action, trying to get the lid off, looking for a plunger, and you're praying now, hey, dear God, please don't let it run over. Oh my goodness, Jesus, don't let it happen. And that's a vigorous course of action, right? If you're just watching it, then, oh well, welcome to step one again. Okay, so, oh my God, this is funny. Hey, buddy. So at first of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. Like a personal house cleaning. Never attempted it. No, I'm still doing your inventory. I never got to mine yet. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to cause and conditions. I'm going to go over this process really fast. And we're going to get into it a little more detail next week. But here it is. We've already read through it. We kind of have an idea. You hear people talk about it endlessly, and they never talk about it. They talk about the fourth step, and then there's the boogeyman, and how hard it was. And they just told me they didn't do a fourth step. Our fourth step. They just told me that. Because I used to be that way 11 years in and out, right? Facing me without the prayer or the idea of something greater than me or my willingness to do this as well. So the first half here on page 62 talks about what we're hoping to accomplish. And that's incorporating a new way of looking at things. Because all I have is one way. And Lee Agnostic, it talks about be willing to change our point of view. But I need a different point of view in order to create change. Yes? And the way I look at things isn't sufficient. The way my wheels work, it doesn't work in my betterment. My life's living proof of that. I'm convinced that I can't carry on the way I've been carrying on. So here they talk about the outlay of that. And what is interesting is I don't know how to apply spiritual principles to me yet. I heard people talk. I don't know how to apply. So we're going to find a method on how to see how this prayer, how these principles, how access to this power, how you start to have your own experience. So they talk about down here, it talked about we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self manifested in various ways which had defeated us, we considered as common manifestations. Right? There's an S on the end of that. What are the common human manifestations that caused our failure? Any human failure. Anybody with these things will have the same problem, but they will not continue to drink. They don't have to have a sacred change of spiritual experience. They could try different method, therapy. We have already covered that, better psychology, all that other stuff that don't seem to work. We need a specific sacred change of spiritual experience. So this is interesting. Resentment is the first common manifestation of self. We see from it stems all forms of spiritual disease. So the first thing where spiritual makes us spiritually sick, right, is not alcoholism. What? It's resentment. That's the human condition. It's the human. Anybody with the amount of resentments that we're carrying is going to be not well. But they won't know it because they can't see it, right? And then the next one they talk about over here is fear. On page 67, fear and finding a recipe. So it talks about learning how to master resentments. That's the purpose of that exercise. The next one is outgrowing fear, right? It's teaching us the mechanics on how the application of spiritual principles to have the experience of being free of these things. The next one is relationships. How to have the relationships I've always sought, hoped for, and maybe redesign what I'm looking for in relationships with people, places, and things, right? And then harms, how to be free of the guilt, shame, and remorse for harms. And then when I go through this whole process, I was laid out by the first 100 men with the guise of a person that's been through this process. What is the hope? Well, this is the hope on page 71. So you got to look at the theme here. The book's really, really, really amazing how it's put together, and it's so simple people miss it. So the purpose of the four is to be rid of the blocks to get access to power. Yes, we agreed on that. As we go through this process, we see what blocks us off: the resentments, the fears, the conduct and harms, the harboring of these feelings, these things. So then it talks about here at the conclusion of my fourth step, it talks about, we hope, page 71, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has been blocking you off from him. So what's the self-will that's been blocking you off from him? Resentments, fears, conducts, and harms. Wow. So we're hoping now, what was the first part of the third step prayer? Relieve me of the bondage of self. Take away my difficulties. Here it's saying, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has been blocking you off from him. You've entered this relationship. It has started without your knowledge, totally. But you're realizing, it seems that when I pray and do these things, I seem to get relief compared to when I don't do it. Didn't ask you, do you understand it? Are you getting results from doing it? Yeah, you know what? It seems to subside what's going on. It seems to bring about a sense of, and what we find out is step 4 is the foundation for step 11. The principles I learn in 4, I'll carry into 11 in the development of my relationship with a power greater than myself, and carrying these things so it becomes a working part of the mind. What's that? The ability to assess how I'm going offline, and how to get back online, and where the focus point, how to move from the bondage of self to the relationship with something greater than me. So back to 71. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has been blocking you off from him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, what's your grosser handicaps? Resentment, fear, harms, and conduct. Pretty simple, right? You have made a good beginning. That being so, you swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And it's really eye-opening. And then when we get into this, it talks about, it reconfirms what this is all about. So page 64, page 63 confirms what they're talking about on 72. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. What are the obstacles in our path? Resentment, fears, harms, and conduct. It's so simple. It's simple. It's mind-boggling. It doesn't change course here. And we build on these ideas. So next week, we're going to engage a little more in depth on the 4th step. But really, really have a look at, it's really page 64, this idea, what they're trying to incorporate with us, and the purpose of it, where they talk about, therefore we started upon a personal inventory. Just read that paragraph this week and see what they're trying to get across and why they're using that as an example. Right? And so if we're going to be successful, we need a new way of looking at things. We need a new way of processing. If I'm going to be free, I need to be able to get access from a power that allows me a new experience than the one I'm having. But I need to be able to see life differently than the way I've been seeing it, and I'm not capable of doing that without a new process. So the whole process, they're hoping, becomes a working part of the mind that they talk about in step 11. Right, to practice these principles on all the things that are happening internally. It's not externally. All the promises are internally. They're not externally. It looks like it's reflected in the world around me on how I conduct myself with people, places, and things, and people's places and things different response to me based on what Bill talked about. He's inwardly rearranged. Something is fundamentally different about him. Like my rescue dog, my Doberman. He's being fundamentally, there's something different about him. Just through the guidelines of certain principles, ideas, and consistency, he's becoming a different dog. And the basis of that is love. It may sound kind of weird, but that's his access to a power greater than himself, which is me. It may sound kind of weird, and his relationship to me is allowing him to have a different experience than what he had with the other people we rescued him from. So in essence, what we are is being rescued. Right? And we're surrounded by a group of people who've had the experience that we're looking for. And they're guiding us along the road of success, because AA is designed for our success. Now they're saying, now it's time for you to participate in the saving of your life, because we can only carry you so far. The rest is between you and a power greater than yourself. And now then you come and join us as we go look for other people who are looking for a different experience, as you once were. But once you experience this, you can't go back and sit in the ship knowing there's people dying. You get back in a lifeboat with a handful of life jackets because you've had a different experience. The basis of that is gratitude, right? You can't hide that. Bill couldn't hide that. As he lied in the hospital, he thought there might be other people that might benefit by what was so freely given to him. Live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. Come walk with us. Have your own experience. And if you've had your experience, find one of us to share it with. And we'll close with you know what? Let's do the third step prayer, just because we got you on the hook here. So the third step prayer, page 63. The wording, of course, is quite optional so long as we express the idea. Right? And I'm going to put on my glasses here, just, show some humility. I know it by heart, but I'm going to, every once in a while I got to pretend I'm a little humble, right, Ray? And exhibit these things, okay. So, God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those that would help with Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life, all capitalized. May I do Thy will always, or 98% of the time, in love and service. We have questions and all that for those who want to participate after. We have a discussion. Any questions?